All right, welcome back to painting. We are going to be starting our next project. And for that, we're going to need to go into your painting kit. So here is my painting kit. And I'm going to need to find a couple of things. I'm going to need to find the two portraits that I have. I'm going to need to find this little piece of transfer paper. And I'm going to need to find these two sheets of watercolor paper. The sheets of watercolor paper are about the same size as a sheet of photocopy paper. So you can see those are about the same size, not quite, but very close. I need one of these. So I'm gonna keep one of these out. I'm gonna put the other one back in my kit because I will use that for my final painting project. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to choose, okay? I have two different faces to choose from. And I get to pick the one that I decide feels more interesting to me. I am then going to take, our first step is to transfer the drawing. So I'm going to create the drawing that I will paint from. And in order to do that, we're going to use transfer paper. So you're going to need your watercolor paper, the photo that you chose, and your transfer sheet. And what I'm gonna do is make kind of a sandwich. So I have my watercolor paper first, then my transfer sheet. That transfer sheet is gonna go darker down. So you can see one side's lighter, one side's darker. The darker side goes down to my watercolor paper. And then I'm going to take my portrait, and you can see I'm gonna line it up along the bottom, and it's just a tiny bit wider than the paper, but that's not a problem. I'm just gonna kind of place it between the two. If you happen to have a paper clip can be super handy to clip this together so that it doesn't move, especially if you don't finish today. If you don't have a paper clip, but maybe you brought tape home last week, one little piece of tape right here to hold everything together will work. Otherwise, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna hang on to it, and I'm not gonna move anything until I finish. So you can see this hand is gonna stay right here. And what I'm gonna do now is trace over the edges that I'm going to need to make my painting. So it's just like when we made the still life, and we used the computer screen. It's just instead I'm using this transfer paper. When I'm tracing the hair, what I want to do is look for big shapes, and I want to look for directions. So you can see I'm going to just kind of put in a few of the shapes, but mostly I'm leaving the hair as empty space. I am going to trace any darker shapes that I see. And before I go too far, because it's always really a bummer if you trace too much and realize later that you have your transfer paper upside down. So I'm going to hold this here so nothing can move, and I'm going to turn these 2 pages like it's a book, and I'm just going to double check that, yep, in fact, I am transferring down onto my sheet. And so I'm just going to go ahead and continue to do that. The more detailed your transfer is, the more information you're going to have to make a good painting. So you want to make sure that you are getting everything that you need. Some things like these, I just traced like the shadow here under the edge of her hair. The stuff underneath the transfer paper is quite pressure sensitive. So if I draw a light line, it will transfer lightly, and I will find some of these like shadow spots on the face to be useful later when I go to make the painting. This is your only job today for painting class, is to choose which of the two faces you're going to use for your portrait and to trace it as thoroughly and completely as possible. So things like noses. I don't want to draw a line down the nose anywhere, but I am going to lightly, again, outline where some of these shadow shapes are. I will find that useful to my painting process later. I'm going to make sure to get all of the details that I can see. And I'm going to trace as carefully and accurately as I can, because like I said, it's this drawing that will help me make my painting later on. So you'll notice when I trace the teeth, I'm tracing around them. I'm not like tracing the line between them. It will be really awkward if you trace the line between. I just traced the top and the bottom. As you can see, it looks a little strange. Make sure when you work on the eye that you trace all of the little details that you can find. White spots, dark spots, weird shapes that lashes make, tear ducts, shadows, all of it. The more detailed your drawing, the more complete your drawing is, the better your painting will be. It's when we have to, when we skip details, that we end up having to make things up later when we paint. And I just have discovered that that can be really tricky depending on your drawing confidence level. So if you're really great at drawing, it's pretty easy to add things in by looking at the photo. If you're not that great at drawing, it can feel really scary to add things in looking at the photo. So you want to make sure that you think ahead to that as you're making your transfer happen. And you can see that this is, you know, a little time consuming. Before I move my transfer paper off, I am going to double check to make sure that I got everything that I need. By peeking again. So just like before, when I gave it a little check and looked underneath, I'm gonna do that same thing. So I'm holding on to this. I'm gonna peel this back and peel the other one back. And I'm just looking to see if I have everything. I see I'm missing like this left-hand side of her nose here. So I'm just gonna come back and draw that in. I'm also just gonna lightly look for where some of those shadows change. So you can see I have a lot of lines. Oops, I forgot the left side of her mouth too. This is why we check. There's no way once you move it to reline this up. And so if you forget something, the transfer paper erases. Or you can flip your paper over and try again on the other side, but like there's not really a way to line this up after I've moved it. Also forgot this side of her face. This top edge of her hair. So you can see I'm just carefully double checking to make sure it looks like I have everything that I need before I pull this apart. And I'm going to just go like this. I'm going to make a little mark in case I have to line things back up. I don't think I will. But here we go. Here's my finished drawing. And you can see that it's incredibly detailed, right? I have all the little spots where the shadows change, spots where in her mouth it gets lighter and darker. All of that will help inform my painting in another couple of days. So make sure you're working carefully to make a very complete image transfer of your chosen portrait.